Keep your hood up, Ivy. Don't let anyone see.
Mommy, why does that man have my hair?
Who spoke? Bring that child forward.
We have to go. Now.
But Mommy, he looks just like...
Those eyes. I know those eyes.
Find them. The woman and child. Kill them both.
Prologue. The moment 5-year-old Ivy's voice rang out across the crowded Capitol Square. "Mommy, why does the king have my hair?" Alara knew her carefully hidden life was over. For 6 years, she'd lived in the Whispering Woods, convinced that Alpha King Vance had abandoned her after their fated night together. What Alara didn't know was that dark magic had stolen Vance's memories of her, and the man she thought forgot her had been a prisoner in his own mind. But the real danger wasn't the past coming back to haunt her. It was the powerful advisor who would kill to keep his secrets buried, and the undeniable truth written in her daughter's face. Before we continue, stop. If you're already hooked by Ivy's dangerous revelation, you need to subscribe right now. This story gets darker, more twisted, and more romantic with every chapter. The Silvercrest market was dangerously crowded that morning, which was exactly why Alara had risked bringing Ivy into the capital. Crowds meant anonymity. Crowds meant she could purchase the rare moonpetal medicine her daughter needed and vanish before anyone noticed the child whose golden hair marked her as royalty. She should have known better. "Mama, look!" Ivy's small hand shot up, pointing toward the raised platform where the king's procession had stopped. "That man has hair like mine." Alara's heart stopped. She yanked Ivy's arm down, but it was too late. "And his eyes," Ivy continued, her voice carrying with that particular clarity only children possess. "They're the same color as when I look in the water." The crowd began to part. Alara felt it before she saw it, that primal, electric pull of recognition that made her skin prickle with awareness and terror. She spun toward the platform, and her worst nightmare materialized. Alpha King Vance stood frozen mid-step, his ceremonial robes rippling in the wind. His golden blonde hair caught the sunlight, and those piercing amber eyes, the same shade that stared back from Ivy's face every morning, were locked onto her daughter with an intensity that made Alara's breath catch. "Ivy, we have to go," Alara whispered urgently, scooping her daughter into her arms. But Ivy was twisting to see better, her small face scrunched in concentration. "Why does he look so sad, Mommy? His eyes are wet like he's crying, but no tears are coming out." The king took a step forward, then another. His royal guard moved with him, but he held up a hand, stopping them. His gaze never left Ivy's face. "You..." Vance's voice rang out, deep and commanding, yet fractured with something Alara recognized as confusion. "Child, what is your name?" Alara's blood turned to ice. She dropped into a hasty curtsy, keeping Ivy clutched against her chest. "Your Majesty, forgive the disturbance. My daughter meant no disrespect." I asked the child. Vance's tone was firmer now, and he was closer, close enough that Alara could see the way his hands trembled slightly at his sides, close enough to see the war being waged behind those amber eyes, eyes that should have recognized her but remained hauntingly blank. "Ivy," her daughter answered proudly, oblivious to the danger. "My name is Ivy, and I'm 5 whole years old." "Are you really a king?" Mama says, "Kings live in castles made of stone and magic." Something cracked across Vance's expression. His hand moved unconsciously to his chest, as if in pain. "Ivy," he repeated, testing the name like it was a key to a locked door. "And your mother, your Majesty." The voice that cut through the tension was smooth as poisoned honey. Lord Malachor glided forward, his dark robes sweeping the cobblestones. His smile didn't reach his cold gray eyes. "Surely you don't mean to delay the entire procession for a peasant child's observation?" Children say such fanciful things. But Vance wasn't listening. He was staring at Alara now, and she watched with growing horror as his pupils dilated, his breathing quickened. "You," he breathed. Do I know you?" It was the exact question he'd asked her 6 years ago at the winter solstice feast, in the garden where moonlight had made everything feel like destiny, before the magic, before the forgetting, before her world had shattered. "No, Your Majesty." Alara forced the lie through clenched teeth. "We've never met." Liar. The word wasn't accusatory, it was desperate. Vance took another step, close enough now that Ivy could have reached out and touched him. "I know you. I know you. Why can't I remember?" "Your Majesty," Malachor's voice sharpened. "The ceremony awaits. Your betrothed awaits." The word hit, like a physical blow. Alara saw Vance flinch, saw the way his hand clenched into a fist. But behind him, Malachor's eyes had fixed on Ivy with an expression that made Alara's survival instincts scream. She'd seen that look before 6 years ago, in the split second before she'd fled the palace. It was the look of a predator calculating how to eliminate a threat. "Forgive us, Your Majesty," Alara said, backing away. "We must go. My daughter is feeling unwell." Ivy chose that moment to place her small hand on Vance's arm. The contact was brief, innocent, but the effect was catastrophic. A flash of golden light erupted from the point of contact, brief, barely visible, but unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. Vance gasped, staggering back as if struck. His eyes went wide, unfocused, and Alara knew exactly what he was seeing. Fragments, memories trying to surface through whatever dark magic held them prisoner. "Seize them!" Malachor's command cracked through the air like a whip. "That woman is a witch. She's attempting to enchant the king." Guards moved instantly. Alara ran. She clutched Ivy to her chest and bolted into the maze of market stalls. Her daughter's confused cries muffled against her shoulder. Behind them, she heard Vance's roar of confusion and fury, heard his command for his guards to stand down, to bring them back safely. But Malachor's voice was louder, more insistent, painting her as a threat. Alara didn't look back. She couldn't. Because even as she ran for their lives, even as her lungs burned and Ivy whimpered in fear, she'd seen the truth written in Vance's eyes in that split second of contact. He didn't remember her, but his soul did. And that made them both more dangerous than Malachor could ever allow them to be. Chapter 1. The chase begins. Alara's boots slammed against wet cobblestones as she plunged deeper into the Orangate slums, where even the king's guards feared to tread. Ivy's arms locked around her neck, the child's frightened breathing hot against her collarbone. "Mama, you're running too fast," Ivy whimpered. "I'm scared." "I know, little flower, I know." Alara's lungs burned as she ducked under a rotting archway into a maze of crumbling tenements. The stench of refuse and desperation clung to everything, but it was familiar territory. She'd lived here once, before she'd foolishly believed a king could love someone like her. Behind them, shouts echoed through the narrow streets. Not the organized cadence of the royal guard, but something worse, the singular, relentless pursuit of one man who'd abandoned protocol entirely. Vance had ignored Malachor's commands, ignored his advisors, ignored the betrothal ceremony waiting at the sun altar. The moment Alara had vanished into the crowd, he'd shifted partially, his alpha senses tracking the scent that his conscious mind couldn't place but his body recognized like breathing. Alara risked a glance backward and her heart stuttered. There, silhouetted against the dusty morning light, stood the Alpha King himself, alone, chest heaving, golden hair disheveled from the chase. His formal robes were gone, stripped away somewhere in his pursuit. He wore only the simple tunic beneath, and he looked nothing like a king. He looked like a man possessed. "I can smell you," Vance called out, his voice rough with desperation and something darker longing that had festered for 6 years without knowing why. Jasmine and pine smoke. Why do I know that scent? Why does it feel like coming home? Alara pressed herself against a wall, hand clamped over Ivy's mouth. Her daughter's eyes were huge, confused, frightened by this stranger who somehow felt important. "Please," Vance's voice cracked through the silence. "I don't understand what's happening to me. When she touched me, I saw fragments, a garden, moonlight. Someone laughing, you laughing. Tell me I'm not losing my mind." He took a step forward, then another, following the scent trail with the inevitability of fate itself. "I've dreamed of jasmine and pine smoke for 6 years. Every night. A woman I can't see. A voice I can't remember. And now you appear with a child who has my eyes, my hair, and when she touched me, I felt—" He stopped abruptly, hand pressed to his chest as if trying to contain physical pain. "Who are you? What did you take from me?" Alara's resolve crumbled slightly. He truly didn't remember. The shadow veil had done its work too well. He wasn't hunting her out of malice, he was hunting answers to questions his own heart was screaming. But before she could decide whether to run or reveal herself, Ivy wriggled free. "Mama," he's crying again with his eyes, her daughter whispered, too loud. "Why is the king so sad?" Vance's head snapped toward the sound. Their eyes met across the crumbling alley, and Alara knew her running was over. Chapter 2. The Confrontation. Vance moved before conscious thought, closing the distance between them with alpha speed. But he didn't grab her, didn't threaten. He simply stood there, blocking the only exit from the abandoned garden they'd stumbled into, his chest rising and falling like he'd been running for miles. Which, Alara realized with a jolt, he had been. "Don't run again," he said quietly. "Please, I won't hurt you. I need to understand." Ivy stared at him with that unnerving directness only children possessed. "You look like you lost something very, very important," she announced. "My mama looks like that sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping." Vance's breath hitched. His gaze dropped to the child, and Alara watched something fundamental shift in his expression. Not recognition the shadow veil still held, but something primal and undeniable. The alpha in him recognized his own blood, even if his mind couldn't. "What's your name?" he asked Ivy gently, crouching to her level despite the mud. "I already told you, Ivy." Her small hand reached out, touching his cheek with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Why are you crying with your eyes? You keep doing that." "I don't know," Vance admitted, and his honesty was so raw it physically hurt Alara to hear. A single tear tracked down his face, disappearing into Ivy's palm. "I feel like I've lost something. Like there's a hole inside me that's been bleeding for years, but I can't remember what caused the wound." "Maybe my mama can help," Ivy offered. "She fixes everything. She fixed my doll when the arm fell off. She makes medicine for people who are sick. Maybe she can fix whatever's broken inside you." Vance's eyes lifted to Alara then, and the weight of his gaze nearly drove her to her knees. "Can you?" The question was barely a whisper. "Can you tell me why looking at you feels like remembering how to breathe? Why I've spent 6 years feeling incomplete without knowing what I was missing?" Alara's throat closed. She wanted to scream the truth at him that they'd been fated mates, that Malachor had stolen their future, that every lonely night she'd spent in the woods, he'd been suffering too, a prisoner of magic he didn't even know existed. But before she could form words, Ivy gasped, "Mama, your necklace is glowing." Alara looked down. The simple pendant she wore, a carved moonstone. Vance had given her that night 6 years ago. The only proof their love had been real was emanating a soft silver light. And Vance's hand had moved unconsciously to his own chest, where beneath his tunic, Alara knew he wore the matching stone. "You kept it," Vance breathed, staring at the pendant like it was a ghost made solid. His hand fumbled at his collar, pulling out an identical moonstone that blazed with answering light. I don't remember where this came from. I've worn it every day for 6 years, and I don't remember why. My advisors told me it was a charm against dark magic. But that's a lie, isn't it? Yes, Alara finally managed. It's a lie. Then tell me the truth. He stood, the twin stones still glowing between them like matching heartbeats. Tell me why my daughter... He stopped, his own words registering. His face went white. My daughter, he repeated, looking at Ivy with dawning horror and wonder. That's why I can't stop looking at her. That's why everything in me is screaming that she's mine. Ivy beamed. Does this mean you're my papa? The word shattered something in Vance. He staggered back against a crumbling wall, sliding down to sit in the dirt, and for the first time since Alara had known him, the Alpha King looked utterly broken. I have a child, he said to no one, to everyone, to the universe that had stolen 6 years from him. I have a child and I don't remember her mother. What kind of monster does that make me? The kind, Alara said softly, finally closing the distance between them. Who had his memories stolen by someone who wanted your crown more than your happiness. Vance's head snapped up. Malachor. It wasn't a question. Chapter 3. Malachor's Move. The name hung in the air between them like a curse made tangible. Vance's eyes had gone dark, the amber bleeding to something more primal, more dangerous. Alara recognized that look she'd seen it once before, 6 years ago, when a drunken noble had grabbed her wrist too roughly at the winter solstice feast. Vance had nearly shifted right there in the banquet hall before she'd calmed him. He's been with me since my father died, Vance said slowly, pieces clicking together in his mind even as the shadow veil fought to keep them scattered. He's the one who arranged my betrothal. He's the one who insisted I needed a suitable mate. He's always been there, right at my shoulder, and I never questioned. His fist slammed into the stone wall behind him, cracking it. Gods, I never questioned anything. Papa, you're bleeding, Ivy said, reaching for his scraped knuckles with concern that made Vance's expression crumble further. We need to leave the city, Alara said urgently. Now, before he realizes you found us. Malachor won't let this stand. If he's willing to use dark magic to erase memories, he'll do worse to protect his secrets. But Vance shook his head, gently letting Ivy examine his minor wounds with the seriousness of a tiny physician. No, we go back. I confront him. I break whatever spell he's... You can't! Alara's voice was sharp with fear. You don't understand how deep this goes. The shadow veil isn't just blocking memories, it's woven into your very essence. If you confront him directly, he can reinforce it, make you forget this conversation, forget Ivy exists. I've studied herbalism and low magic for 6 years trying to find a way to break it. There's only one method that works. Which is true love's bond, witnessed by blood. Alara touched the glowing moonstone at her throat. These stones were activated by our mate bond that night. They're the only reason the veil hasn't spread to erase you from my memory, too. But to break it completely, we'd need time, ritual. Things we don't have if Malachor knows you're remembering. Vance looked at Ivy, then back to Alara, and something fierce and protective blazed in his expression. Then we buy time. I'll return to the palace, play along with his schemes until... Your Majesty! The shout echoed through the slums, followed by the thunder of approaching boots. Royal guards, dozens of them, flooding into the garden district, and at their head, robes billowing like dark wings, came Lord Malachor. His face was a mask of concern, but his gray eyes glittered with malicious triumph as they locked onto Alara. Thank the gods we found you in time, Your Majesty. Step away from the witch. She's clearly enchanted you. She's not, Vance began, but Malachor raised his hand, and Alara saw the dark shimmer of magic gathering around his fingers. "Sleep, my king. You've been through a terrible ordeal." The spell hit Vance like a physical blow. He swayed, fighting it with alpha strength, but the shadow veil recognized its master's magic. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. "No!" Alara lunged for him, but guards seized her arms, wrenching them behind her back hard enough to make her cry out. "Mama!" Ivy screamed, trying to run to her mother, but Malachor was faster. His hand closed around the child's wrist, and Ivy's scream cut off as dark magic wrapped around her small throat, choking her into silence. "Such a spirited little thing," Malachor mused, examining Ivy like she was a particularly interesting specimen. Pure alpha bloodline, uncorrupted by politics or weak breeding. She'll serve perfectly. "Don't you dare touch her," Alara snarled, struggling against the guards. "I'll kill you myself." "You'll hang for kidnapping and attempting to assassinate the king," Malachor interrupted smoothly. "These loyal guards witnessed you attacking His Majesty with dark magic. Isn't that right, Captain?" The guard captain, a man Alara vaguely recognized from 6 years ago, one of Malachor's creatures, nodded grimly. "The witch tried to murder the king when he discovered her plot. We arrived just in time." "No, that's not someone help!" Alara's desperate shouts echoed off empty buildings. The slum dwellers who might have witnessed the truth had already scattered, knowing better than to cross the king's advisor. Malachor leaned close, his breath cold against Alara's ear. "You should have stayed hidden in your forest, little herbalist. Did you truly think you could steal the king's heart and live? I've spent 6 years ensuring Vance remained malleable, controllable. 6 years building toward my ascension, and now you've delivered me the final piece I needed." He held up Ivy, who struggled silently against the magic binding her voice, a child of pure alpha blood, sired by the king himself. "When I perform the transfer ritual at the sun altar during tomorrow's eclipse, her essence will strip Vance of his alpha status and grant it to me. The kingdom will bow to a true ruler." "He's your cousin," Alara spat. "You share the same bloodline. You'd murder family for power?" "Distant cousin. 4th removed. Not enough royal blood to claim the throne legitimately, but enough to make the transfer ritual possible." Malachor's smile was poisonous. "Vance's father saw my potential and feared it. He ensured I could never rule, but he didn't anticipate that his son would be stupid enough to breed with a nobody, creating the perfect sacrifice." Alara's mind raced. Vance was unconscious, Ivy was captured, and she'd be locked away or more likely executed before she could mount any rescue. But there was one thing Malachor didn't know. One secret she'd kept, even from herself until this moment. The Dowager Queen, the old woman who'd helped her escape 6 years ago, pressing a bag of coins and a whispered warning into her hands. "Run, child. Protect what you carry. When the time comes, the truth will speak itself." Vance's mother knew, had always known, and if she was still alive, still watching from whatever exile Malachor had engineered. "Take the witch to the black cells," Malachor ordered, "and bring the king back to the palace. Tell the court he's fallen ill from the witch's curse. I'll require 3 days to heal him." His eyes glinted with dark promise. 3 days should be enough to prepare the ritual. As guards dragged Alara away, she locked eyes with Ivy. Her daughter's face was pale with terror, but she was fighting, still struggling against Malachor's grip with 5-year-old fury. "Be brave, little flower," Alara thought desperately. "Mama's coming for you, I promise." But even as she made the vow, she heard Malachor's final words, spoken too softly for the guards to hear but perfectly audible to her herbalist-trained senses. "By the way, dear Alara, I've already ensured the Dowager Queen won't interfere. She's been dead for 3 months. Tragic accident with her evening tea." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Her last hope, snuffed out like a candle. Alara stopped struggling. Let them drag her toward whatever dungeon awaited, because fighting now would waste energy she'd need later. They thought her a simple herbalist, a frightened mother. They didn't know that she'd spent 6 years in the Whispering Woods learning not just healing magic, but the darker arts whispered by ancient trees and desperate spirits. They wanted to call her a witch? Fine. She'd show them what a real witch could do. Chapter 4. The Broken Veil. The black cells lived up to their name. No windows, no light save the dying torch outside Alara's iron door. No sound except the steady drip of water somewhere in the darkness. She'd been here for 18 hours by her count, and every minute felt like an eternity knowing Ivy was somewhere in this palace, terrified and alone. But Alara hadn't wasted her time weeping. She'd used every second to prepare. The guards had stripped her of obvious weapons, but they hadn't thought to check her hair. Woven into her braid were 3 blackthorn needles, coated in a sleeping draught strong enough to drop a grown man in seconds. They hadn't found the packet of night whisper dust sewn into her sleeve hem, or the tiny vial of fire lily oil hidden in the hollow of her belt buckle. An herbalist's arsenal was rarely obvious. She'd also been listening. Stone carried sound if you knew how to hear it, and the palace foundations were old, riddled with cracks and hollow spaces. She'd tracked the guards' rotation pattern, identified the shift change, and most importantly, located Ivy. Her daughter was in the Sun Tower, the highest point of the palace, where ancient rituals were performed. Where, in less than 30 hours, an eclipse would darken the sky, and Malachor would attempt to steal Vance's birthright using their daughter's blood. Not if Alara reached her first. The guard who brought her evening meal was young, nervous, and made the fatal mistake of opening the door fully instead of sliding the tray through the slot. Alara waited until he bent to set down the moldy bread and murky water, then struck. The blackthorn needle pierced his neck. He crumpled without a sound. She took his keys, his cloak, and his dagger. The corridor beyond was blessedly empty. Malachor was arrogant enough to assume a single guard sufficient for a powerless herbalist. His mistake. Alara moved through the palace like a ghost, using servants' passages she remembered from 6 years ago when she'd briefly worked in the kitchens before the solstice feast changed everything. The stones remembered her feet. The shadows welcomed her. She was halfway to the Sun Tower when she felt a pulse of familiar energy that made her moonstone pendant flare with sudden heat. Vance. He was close, awake, and if the frantic, searching quality of his aura was any indication, fighting against Malachor's magic with everything he had. Alara hesitated. Ivy was her priority, but if Vance was free, if they worked together. The decision was made for her when she rounded a corner and nearly collided with the Alpha King himself. Vance looked like he'd been through a war. His formal robes were torn, his face haggard, and his eyes gods. His eyes were wild with desperation and fractured memory. He had her by the shoulders before she could react, pulling her close with shaking hands. "Tell me it's real," he demanded hoarsely. "Tell me I have a daughter. Tell me we that you and I." He couldn't finish, the shadow veil strangling the words before they could form. "It's real," Alara said quickly. "All of it. But Vance, we don't have time." "He has her. Malachor has Ivy." I heard the guards talking. Vance's voice cracked. "He's going to use her in some ritual. He's going to kill our daughter, and I can't even remember how she came to exist. I can't remember you, and it's tearing me apart." "Then we break it," Alara interrupted. "The veil. We break it now." "How?" Instead of answering, Alara took his hand. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The moment their skin touched, the twin moonstones erupted with blinding silver light. Vance gasped, staggering. And Alara felt it too, a violent tearing sensation as the first layer of the shadow veil began to shred. And with it came the memories. Vance saw her across the solstice feast, laughing with the kitchen maids, a crown of winter roses in her dark hair. He remembered asking her to dance despite protocol screaming it was inappropriate. Remembered the way she'd blushed, the way she'd felt in his arms. He saw the garden, moonlight turning everything to silver, her confession that she'd dreamed of him for months, his own admission that his arranged betrothal felt like a cage, the way she'd kissed him first, brave and terrified and perfect. The mating bond snapping into place between them like destiny made tangible. The promises whispered in the dark. I'll call off the wedding. I'll make you my queen. Just give me time. And then darkness. Malachor's voice. A spell. Pain. Her face vanishing from his mind even as he screamed for her. Vance collapsed to his knees, dragging Alara down with him. Tears streamed down his face as 6 years of stolen memories crashed through the weakened veil. Alara. He breathed her name like a prayer, like an apology, like a curse. Your name is Alara. You taste like jasmine tea. You hum when you're nervous. His voice broke. I left you. I forgot you. I let him erase you, and I didn't even fight. You couldn't fight, Alara said fiercely, gripping his face between her hands. The veil wouldn't let you, but we don't have time for this now. The memories are only partial. The veil will repair itself if we don't keep moving. Then we finish this. Vance stood, pulling her up with him, and his eyes had cleared to focused rage. We get our daughter. We end Malachor. And we burn that God's damned spell out of my head forever. Together? Together, he swore, and when his hand clasped hers again, the moonstone's light steadied to a constant, defiant glow. Somewhere in the sun tower, Ivy waited. And for the first time in 6 years, her parents were coming for her as a united force. Malachor had no idea what he'd unleashed. Chapter 5. The Sun Altar Battle. The sun tower's spiral staircase seemed endless, each step an eternity while Ivy remained in danger above. Alara's lungs burned, but Vance's hand in hers was an anchor, a promise, and together they climbed toward the ritual chamber where ancient kings had once communed with celestial forces. Where Malachor now prepared to murder their daughter. They burst through the chamber doors just as the first shadow of the eclipse touched the sun. The timing was devastating. Malachor had planned perfectly. The ritual chamber was circular, open to the sky through a domed glass ceiling that now filtered the dying light into an eerie twilight. At the center, carved from pure white marble, stood the sun altar itself. And bound to it with chains of dark magic, small and terrified but still defiant, was Ivy. "Mama!" Her cry shattered Alara's heart. Ivy's golden hair was matted with tears, her small wrists raw from struggling against the bindings. But her eyes, those amber eyes that mirrored her father's, blazed with unbroken spirit. "Right on time," Malachor said pleasantly, as if welcoming guests to tea rather than interrupting a child sacrifice. He stood beside the altar in ceremonial robes of deepest black arcane symbols crawling across the fabric like living things. In his hands, he held a dagger forged from obsidian and starlight, a weapon that could cut through not just flesh, but the very essence of what made an alpha royal. Around him, a circle of his most loyal followers stood witness. 12 hooded figures whose silence felt more threatening than any battle cry. "Let her go." Vance's voice was deadly calm, the kind of quiet that preceded hurricanes. "This ends now, Malachor. I remember everything, the garden, the spell, 6 years of manipulation." His body began to shift, bones cracking as his alpha form threatened to emerge. "I remember how you promised my dying father you'd guide me, and instead you've been slowly poisoning everything I am." "Poisoning?" Malachor laughed, genuinely amused. "I've been perfecting you, cousin. Your father was weak, sentimental. He would have let the kingdom fall to ruin for the sake of love. He spat the word like a curse. I removed your distractions, arranged a betrothal that would have strengthened our borders, groomed you to be the ruthless leader this realm needs." By erasing his mate? Alara stepped forward, night whisper dust palmed in her left hand, fire lily oil coating the dagger in her right. By stealing 6 years of his daughter's life? The girl is a tool, nothing more. Malachor's casual dismissal of Ivy's humanity made even his followers shift uncomfortably. Her blood is pure alpha, unsullied by politics or weak emotional bonds. When I drain her essence during the eclipse's peak, her power will flow into me, and Vance will become what he should have been from the start: human, controllable, alive, but powerless. "You're insane," Vance snarled, taking another step forward, but Malachor raised the obsidian blade to Ivy's throat. "One more step and I open her here and now, eclipse or not. The ritual will be messier, less complete, but she'll still be dead and you'll still lose your alpha status watching your daughter bleed out." His gray eyes were empty of anything resembling humanity. "Is that what you want, cousin? To spend your last moments as a true alpha watching what your foolish mating produced die screaming?" Alara felt Vance's rage through their bond, felt him calculating impossible odds, felt his desperation. But she also felt something else, a pulse of energy from the moonstone at her throat, answering a resonance from Ivy. Their daughter wasn't just terrified, she was angry. And in that anger, something ancient and powerful was waking. "Papa," Ivy said clearly, her childish voice cutting through the tension like a bell. "I'm not scared anymore." "That's good, little one," Vance said, his voice breaking. "Be brave for me. Just a little longer." "No, Papa. I mean, I'm not scared because I can feel it." Ivy's eyes began to glow, not with reflected light, but with an inner radiance that was pure molten gold. "The thing inside me that's like you. It's really, really angry that this bad man made you forget us." Malachor's confidence flickered. "What?" The chains binding Ivy shattered. Not broke, shattered, exploding into fragments of frozen dark magic that disintegrated before hitting the ground. Ivy stood, and though she was still a small 5-year-old child, the power radiating from her made the ritual chamber's stones groan. "Impossible," Malachor breathed. "She's too young to shift. Children can't access alpha power until puberty." "My children could shift before they could walk," Alara said, remembering those terrifying early years in the Whispering Woods. "I thought it was an anomaly. But it wasn't, was it? It was bloodline purity. Vance is the Alpha King, direct descendant of the first wolves. I'm a hereditary herbalist, my magic reaching back 7 generations. Ivy isn't just an alpha. She's a convergence," Vance finished, understanding dawning. Magic and shifter blood, perfectly balanced. Ivy looked at her hands, watching golden light dance across her small palms. "The voice inside me says you hurt my papa. It says you made my mama cry for 6 whole years. It says you're a very, very bad man." Her voice was still childlike, but beneath it rumbled something ancient and furious. "It says I should make you stop." Malachor moved with desperate speed, the obsidian dagger flashing toward Ivy's heart. But he'd forgotten what every parent learns when you threaten a child in front of their father. You face not a man, but a force of nature. Vance's full alpha form erupted, massive and terrible. He moved faster than thought, his body a blur of silver fur and righteous fury. His jaws closed around Malachor's wrist, crushing it. The dagger clattered away, and Malachor screamed. But the damage was already done. The ritual had been activated. The eclipse reached totality, and dark magic exploded from the broken circle, seeking Ivy's blood, seeking the power it had been promised. "Ivy, no!" Alara threw herself forward, but the magic was faster. It struck Ivy dead center and stopped. The child stood in the heart of a maelstrom of dark magic, completely untouched. Around her, a sphere of golden light pulsed with each heartbeat, and where the dark magic touched that light, it simply unmade itself, unraveling, returning to nothing. "This magic is old and mean and wrong," Ivy said, her voice now carrying harmonics that made the ritual chamber ring like a bell. She looked at her father, still in alpha form, standing over Malachor's broken body. "Papa, your head hurts because of the bad shadows, right?" Vance shifted back to human, naked and bloodied but nodding. "Yes, little flower, the shadows won't let me remember everything. Then I'll make them go away." Before anyone could stop her, Ivy touched Vance's chest, directly over his heart where the shadow veil had wrapped itself like poison ivy around his soul. The explosion of golden light was blinding. Alara felt the shockwave of pure bloodline magic ripple outward, felt it touch her moonstone, felt it synchronize with the mate bond still thrumming between her and Vance. And in that moment of perfect convergence, child touching father, mate bond blazing, moonstone magic amplifying everything, the shadow veil didn't just break. It was incinerated. Vance screamed, but not in pain, in relief, in recognition, in the overwhelming rush of 6 years of stolen memories returning all at once, no longer fragments but complete, whole, perfect. He remembered every moment with Alara, every whispered promise, every touch. He remembered the morning after, when they'd made plans for their future. He remembered confronting Malachor about calling off the betrothal and the advisor's false acceptance. He remembered the spell hitting him, remembered fighting it, screaming Alara's name even as it was stolen from his mind. Remembered the agony of forgetting the most important person in his world and not even knowing what he'd lost. And he remembered 6 years of emptiness, of dreams he couldn't explain, of searching for something he couldn't name, of wondering why nothing felt right, why his heart felt like it was missing pieces. "Ilara," he sobbed her name, and this time it wasn't confusion or desperation. It was coming home. "Gods, Ilara, I'm so sorry. I tried to fight it. I tried." "I know," she whispered, falling to her knees beside him, pulling both him and Ivy into her arms. "I know, my love. You're here now. We're all here." Around them, Malachor's followers fled. Their master lay broken, his wrist shattered, his ritual destroyed, his power scattered to ash. The royal guards who'd been stationed outside finally burst in, weapons drawn, but they stopped short at the sight before them. The Alpha King, naked and weeping, wrapped around a woman and child who glowed with residual magic. Captain Theron, one of the few guards not corrupted by Malachor's influence, assessed the situation with veteran efficiency. "Your Majesty, what are your orders?" Vance looked up, and despite the tears, his voice carried absolute authority. "Arrest Lord Malachor for treason, conspiracy, and the use of forbidden dark magic. Lock him in the black cells. And someone find me some damned clothes." Then, softer, to Alara and Ivy, "Let's go home." Chapter 6. A Kingdom Restored. The dawn following the eclipse broke clear and golden, as if the sky itself was celebrating the darkness's defeat. Alara stood on the king's private balcony, watching the capital city slowly wake, and marveled at how much had changed in a single day. How much had been restored. Behind her, in the massive royal bed she'd once thought she'd never see again, Vance slept with Ivy curled against his chest. They'd been like that for hours, her daughter refusing to let go of her father, and Vance holding on just as fiercely. 6 years of missed bedtime stories, missed goodnight kisses, missed everything they had so much to rebuild. But they had time now. All the time in the world. You're thinking too loud. Vance's sleep-rough voice made her turn. He was awake, carefully extracting himself from Ivy's octopus grip without waking her. I can feel your worry through the bond. I'm not worried, Alara said, but it was a lie, and they both knew it. I'm just processing. Yesterday morning I was a fugitive. Now I'm apparently going to be queen. Vance crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. The mate bond between them sang with contentment, finally complete after 6 years of forced silence. You don't have to be queen if you don't want to. We can find another way. I won't force you into a role you didn't choose. Your advisors will have opinions, Alara pointed out. I'm a nobody, a low-ranking herbalist. The nobility will accept you or find themselves seeking employment elsewhere, Vance said firmly. I've spent 6 years being manipulated, controlled, pushed toward an appropriate match that would have been loveless and political. I'm done compromising. You're my fated mate. Ivy is my legitimate heir. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. The steel in his voice made Alara smile despite her fears. This was the Vance she'd fallen in love with, not the confused, controlled puppet Malachor had created, but the fierce, protective alpha who'd promised to change the world for her. The Dowager Queen, Alara said quietly. Malachor told me she was dead, that he'd poisoned her 3 months ago. Vance's arms tightened. I know. I found the evidence in his chambers last night while you and Ivy slept. He documented everything, his poisons, his spells, his slow manipulation of the court. My mother was the last person who truly knew me before the shadow veil. She kept questioning his influence, asking why I seemed different, so he killed her and made it look like natural causes. I'm sorry, Alara whispered. She helped me escape 6 years ago, gave me money and told me to protect what I carried. She knew about Ivy before I did. She always had a gift for seeing what others missed. Vance's voice was thick with grief. She would have loved knowing Ivy, would have been thrilled to finally have a grandchild who could match her own stubbornness. They stood in silence for a moment, mourning the woman who'd protected them from the shadows. Then Ivy's voice broke the quiet. Are we really staying in the castle? Forever and ever? They turned to find their daughter sitting up in bed, hair a wild golden tangle, eyes bright with hope and residual fear. She'd been so brave during the ritual, channeling power that should have destroyed her. But now, in the gentle morning light, she was just a 5-year-old who'd been through something terrifying. Forever and ever, Vance confirmed, crossing to scoop her up. This is your home now, little flower. Your Princess Ivy, and everyone in the kingdom is going to know your name. But what if more bad men come? Ivy asked, small hands clutching her father's shirt. What if they try to hurt you again? Then they'll have to go through me, Alara said firmly, joining them. And your papa, and every loyal guard who spent 6 years wondering why their king seemed like a stranger. You broke the shadow veil, Ivy. You saved us all. Do you understand how powerful that makes you? Ivy considered this seriously. The voice inside me, the gold one that got really angry, says I'm special. But I don't feel special. I feel scared sometimes. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared, Vance told her gently. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. You were so brave yesterday. Your mama and I are incredibly proud of you. Do I have to do magic again? Ivy's voice was very small. It hurt a little, like my insides were too full of light. Alara and Vance exchanged glances. Their daughter's power was unprecedented, dangerous in the wrong hands, and likely to make her a target for anyone seeking to use her. But she was also just a child who deserved to have a childhood. You never have to use magic if you don't want to, Alara promised. We'll find someone to teach you control, to help you understand what you are. But you're not a weapon, Ivy. You're our daughter. That comes first, always. A knock at the door interrupted them. Captain Theron entered at Vance's command, his expression grave. "Your Majesty, the council is assembled. They're demanding answers." "Let them demand," Vance said coolly. "I'll address them when I'm ready. But first, send for the royal seamstress. My daughter needs a proper wardrobe, and my mate needs a coronation gown." Theron's eyes widened fractionally, the first crack in his professional demeanor. "A coronation, Your Majesty. The council hasn't approved." "I'm not asking for approval." Vance's alpha authority filled the room, undeniable and absolute. "Alara is my fated mate. The mate bond was established 6 years ago and has been verified by the Moonstone ritual, witnessed by bloodline magic, and tested in combat. By ancient law that predates the council itself, she is already my queen in everything but ceremony. We're simply making it official." "The nobility will protest," Theron warned. "Lord Malachor had already arranged your betrothal to Lady Seraphine. Her family has considerable influence." "Her family can direct their complaints to the black cells where Malachor is currently residing," Vance said flatly. "He arranged that betrothal through manipulation and dark magic. It's void. Lady Seraphine is welcome to find another match." Captain Theron studied Vance for a long moment, then something like relief crossed his features. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but it's good to see you acting like yourself again. These past 6 years, you've seemed diminished, controlled. We all felt it, but couldn't identify the source." "Malachor was very skilled at hiding his influence," Vance acknowledged. "But that ends now. I want a full investigation into everyone he placed in positions of power. Anyone who can't be trusted is removed. I'm rebuilding this court from the foundation up, and I'm doing it with people who value loyalty and truth over political maneuvering." "It will be done, Your Majesty." Theron bowed, then hesitated. "And the child, Princess Ivy? There will be questions about her display of power yesterday. The ritual chamber guards are already spreading stories." "Let them," Alara said before Vance could respond. "Let the kingdom know that their king has an heir. Let them know she's powerful enough to destroy dark magic with a touch. Let any future Malachors think twice before threatening this family." Vance smiled, fierce and proud. "My queen has spoken." The formal announcement was made at noon from the grand balcony overlooking the central square, the same square where Ivy had innocently pointed out her resemblance to the king just 2 days ago. Now, the three of them stood together, a united family, while the entire city gathered below. Vance wore his full ceremonial regalia, crown of ancient silver and moonstone glinting in the sunlight. Beside him, Alara wore a gown of deep forest green, hasty work by the seamstress, but beautiful nonetheless, with the moonstone pendant displayed prominently at her throat. And between them, holding both their hands, stood Ivy in a child-sized gown of gold that matched her hair. The crowd's reaction was mixed confusion, curiosity, and from some quarters, clear hostility. But Vance's voice, amplified by the balcony's ancient acoustics, carried to every corner of the square. "6 years ago, I was ensorcelled by someone I trusted," he began, and the crowd fell silent. "Lord Malachor, my own cousin, used forbidden dark magic to erase the memory of my fated mate and manipulate me toward a political marriage that would have served his ambitions, not the kingdom's welfare. For 6 years, I have been a puppet king, making decisions that were not truly my own." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was unprecedented, a king admitting vulnerability, admitting he'd been controlled. But yesterday, that spell was broken by the most powerful force in any realm, love. Vance looked down at Ivy, who waved shyly at the crowd. "This is Princess Ivy, my daughter and heir. Her bloodline magic, pure and uncorrupted, destroyed the shadow veil and restored my true self." And this, he took Alara's hand, raising it high, is Queen Alara, my fated mate, mother of my child, and the strongest person I have ever known. She's a commoner, someone shouted from the crowd. An herbalist, not suitable to be queen. She's suitable because she's mine, Vance replied, his alpha authority making the heckler fall silent. The mate bond doesn't care about social status or political convenience. It cares about souls that match, about two halves becoming whole. Alara is my queen by ancient right, by magical law, and by my own choice. Anyone who questions this questions the foundations of what makes us wolves. He paused, letting that sink in, then continued in a softer voice. For 6 years, my daughter grew up without a father because dark magic stole that from us. For 6 years, I searched for something I couldn't name, feeling incomplete and not knowing why. No more. This family will never be torn apart again. I swear it on my crown, on my alpha blood, on everything I am. The crowd was silent now, processing. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single voice called out, "Long live Queen Alara! Long live Princess Ivy!" Others took up the cry. Not everyone there were still hostile faces, still nobility who would scheme and resist, but enough to matter, enough to begin healing the kingdom's wounds. As the sun set that evening, Alara stood on the same balcony, now empty and quiet. Ivy was asleep in her new bedroom, exhausted by the day's ceremonies. Vance was dealing with the endless parade of advisors and nobles who needed reassurance, needed direction, needed their king to be present and whole. But he'd promised to find her when he could, and as if summoned by her thoughts, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "I missed 6 years of this," he said quietly, his breath warm against her neck. 6 years of holding you, of falling asleep beside you, of watching Ivy grow. I can never get that time back. No, Alara agreed. But we have now, and tomorrow, and all the days after that. I'm never letting shadows come between us again, Vance vowed. Never. I don't care what schemes the nobility dreams up, what political pressures emerge, what disasters threaten. You and Ivy are my priority. Always. Alara turned in his arms, studying the face she'd loved for 6 years, even when she thought he'd abandoned her. We're going to have to navigate this carefully. There are people who won't accept me, who'll see Ivy as a threat or a tool. Let them try, Vance said, and his smile was all alpha, protective, possessive, fierce. They'll learn quickly that the king they thought they knew is gone. I'm done being controlled, done being appropriate. I'm going to rule my way, with my queen beside me, and our daughter as proof that truth always finds its voice. From inside, they heard Ivy call out in her sleep, not a nightmare, but something softer. "Mama? Papa?" Together, they went to her. Together, they soothed her back to deeper dreams. Together, they stood watch over the child who'd saved them all. And as the moonstone pendants glowed softly in the darkness, the mate bond between them sang a truth that no shadow could ever steal again. Some things were meant to be. Some loves were written in the stars themselves, and no amount of dark magic could keep them apart forever. The truth had found its voice, and it sounded like family. This is it. This is where you decide if you're just a casual listener or someone who commits to stories that matter. Vance and Alara fought 6 years of dark magic to rebuild their family. Ivy shattered a shadow veil with pure bloodline power. And you're just going to walk away without subscribing? Really? Here's what you're missing if you don't hit that button right now. More stories like this. More broken families made whole. More magic, more romance, more battles against the darkness. We're building something here, a community of readers who understand that the best stories aren't just entertainment, they're experiences. Don't be the person who finds out 3 months from now that we've posted 10 more stories this good and you missed all of them. Subscribe now. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Because the next story might be even better than this one. Click that button